Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, watching the massive alien ships float in space like deadly jewels. The enemy vessels were beautiful in a terrifying way. Their hulls looked like they were made from blue crystal, and they gleamed with strange light that pulsed like a heartbeat. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the alien fleet," reported Lieutenant Hayes, his voice tight with worry. Sarah nodded. "Put it on the main screen." The view screen flickered to life, showing a creature that made Sarah's blood run cold. The alien was tall and thin, with 4 arms and skin that looked like polished metal. Its eyes were completely black, and when it spoke, its voice sounded like grinding gears. "I am War Commander Thexval of the Zephyrian Empire," the creature said. "You primitive beings have exactly 72 of your hours to surrender your planet and submit to our rule." Sarah stepped forward, keeping her face calm even though her heart was racing. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Space Navy. We will not surrender our world to invaders." The alien's mouth twisted into what might have been a smile. "Your defiance is amusing but pointless. We have conquered 47 star systems. 32 different species now serve under our rule. You cannot resist us." "We'll see about that," Sarah said firmly. Thexval raised one of his 4 hands. "Perhaps you need a demonstration of why resistance is futile. Observe." The view screen split to show both the alien commander and a view of space outside. One of the Zephyrian ships moved closer to Earth's orbital defense platform. The platform was humanity's pride, a massive structure bristling with laser cannons and plasma weapons. "Fire on our vessel," Thexval commanded. "Use your strongest weapons," Sarah frowned. This had to be a trick. "I'm not going to help you test our defenses." "You misunderstand," the alien said with that grinding laugh. "We want you to attack us. We want you to see how useless your weapons are." The defense platform's commander, Colonel Martinez, appeared on a smaller screen. "Admiral, should I fire?" This could be our chance, Sarah thought for a moment. If the aliens wanted to show off, maybe she could learn something useful. "Do it, Colonel." Full power on all weapons. The space around the defense platform lit up like a small sun, as dozens of laser beams and plasma bolts shot toward the Zephyrian ship. The weapons were powerful enough to cut through the hull of any human vessel in seconds. But something impossible happened. The energy beams passed right through the alien ship like it wasn't even there. The hull seemed to shimmer and phase, becoming transparent. Every single shot went harmlessly into empty space behind the vessel. "What the hell?" whispered Lieutenant Hayes. Thexval's ugly laugh filled the bridge. "Behold our quantum phase armor. Your primitive energy weapons cannot even touch us. When activated, our ships exist partially outside your dimension. Your photons and plasma simply pass through us like light through air." The alien ship's hull solidified again, becoming completely real and solid once more. "We have used this technology to conquer every species we have encountered. None have found a way to penetrate our perfect defense." Sarah felt cold dread settle in her stomach. If their most powerful weapons couldn't even touch the enemy ships, how could they possibly fight back? "Your weapons are like throwing stones at ghosts," Thexval continued. "You cannot harm what you cannot hit. This is why we offer you the chance to surrender with dignity. Serve us willingly and your species will be allowed to survive." "And if we refuse?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. "Then we will demonstrate why 47 star systems chose surrender over destruction." The alien's black eyes seemed to gleam. "We will turn your cities to glass and your oceans to vapor. Your planet will serve as a warning to other primitive species." Sarah straightened her shoulders. "We need time to consider your offer." 72 hours, Thexval repeated. "When your sun next sets, you will give us your answer. Choose wisely, Admiral Chen. This is the only mercy the Zephyrian Empire will show." The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Lieutenant Hayes turned to Sarah with wide eyes. "Admiral, what do we do?" "Our weapons can't touch them." Sarah looked out at the alien fleet. There were 12 ships, each one the size of a space station. They hung in space like sleeping monsters, their crystal hulls pulsing with that eerie blue light. Every few seconds the light would flicker and intensify, showing that their impossible armor was still active. "Get me a line to Earth Command," Sarah ordered, "and patch in all fleet commanders. We need an emergency meeting." Within minutes, the bridge's communication screens were filled with worried faces. General Marcus Rodriguez from Earth's surface, Admiral Thompson from the Luna base, Colonel Park from Mars Station. All the top military leaders were online. "You all saw the demonstration," Sarah began. Our energy weapons are useless against their armor technology. General Rodriguez, a tough man with gray hair and scars from the resource wars, spoke first. Admiral, I've been in combat for 30 years. I've never seen anything like that phasing trick. How do we fight an enemy we can't hit? There has to be a weakness, said Admiral Thompson, her voice strained. No technology is perfect, Sarah nodded. That's what I'm hoping. I want our best scientists working on this problem. We have 72 hours to find a solution, or... She didn't finish the sentence. Everyone knew what would happen. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the head of Earth's Advanced Physics Research Division, joined the call from her laboratory. Her black hair was messy, and her eyes were already red from lack of sleep. Admiral, I saw the alien demonstration. I'm already running simulations on how their phasing technology might work. What's your initial assessment? Sarah asked. Elena pulled up a holographic display showing energy patterns. The way their hull became transparent suggests they're shifting matter into a parallel dimension. It would take enormous amounts of energy to maintain such a field. But it obviously works, General Rodriguez pointed out grimly. Yes, but every technology has limits, Elena insisted. I need more data. Can we get them to demonstrate their armor again? Sarah thought about this. Maybe. They seemed proud of showing off. But what good would it do if we still can't hit them? I need to understand exactly how the phasing works, Elena explained. The timing, the energy patterns, any fluctuations in the field. There might be windows of vulnerability. Colonel Martinez from the orbital platform spoke up. Admiral, I've got sensor data from our attack. I'm sending it to Dr. Vasquez now. As Elena studied the incoming data, her frown deepened. This is incredible. The energy readings are off the charts. They're using more power for their armor than our entire defense grid uses in a week. Is that good or bad for us? Sarah asked. I'm not sure yet. But systems that use tremendous amounts of energy often have specific requirements and limitations. Elena's fingers flew over her holographic controls. Give me some time to analyze this. Admiral Thompson leaned forward on her screen. What about our kinetic weapons? Railguns, mass drivers? General Rodriguez shook his head. We've been phasing out kinetic weapons for decades. Most of our ships only have energy-based armaments now. The aliens probably know that from observing us. Sarah felt a spark of an idea. What about the older ships? The ones we were planning to scrap? The pre-energy weapon vessels? Rodriguez looked thoughtful. Some of them still have magnetic cannons and solid projectile systems. But Admiral, those weapons are ancient by our standards. They're not nearly as powerful as our modern laser arrays. But they fire solid objects instead of energy beams, Sarah mused. If the alien armor phases out energy, you think physical projectiles might work differently? Dr. Vasquez looked up from her data with sudden interest. It's worth considering, Sarah said. Their commander seemed very confident that our primitive weapons were useless. Maybe he was only thinking about energy weapons. General Rodriguez was already pulling up fleet inventories. We've got maybe 20 ships with kinetic weapons still installed. Most of them are in shipyards or museums. Get them ready for combat, Sarah ordered. I don't care if you have to pull them out of display cases. We need every option. Colonel Park from Mars Station raised his hand. Admiral, we've got industrial equipment here that might help. Mass drivers for launching cargo. Magnetic accelerators for mining operations. They're not weapons, but they could probably throw objects pretty hard. Sarah nodded. Start converting anything that can launch a physical projectile. We're going to need all the help we can get. As the meeting continued, Sarah kept looking at the alien ships through the bridge windows. They hadn't moved since delivering their ultimatum. They just floated there, patient and deadly, waiting for humanity's answer. Lieutenant Hayes approached her quietly. Admiral, what do you really think our chances are? Sarah considered the question honestly. Right now, not good. They've conquered 47 star systems with this technology. They obviously know what they're doing. But, Hayes prompted, hearing something in her voice. Sarah smiled grimly. But humans have survived worse odds before. We're stubborn, we adapt. And sometimes being primitive has its advantages. She turned back to the communication screens where the military leaders were still planning. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 72 hours to find a way to fight ghosts. Let's get to work. As the meeting broke up and the screens went dark, Sarah remained on the bridge, staring at the alien fleet. Somewhere out there, War Commander Thexvel was probably laughing at humanity's helplessness. He had good reason to be confident. His perfect armor had never failed. But Sarah had learned something important during her years in space. There was no such thing as perfect technology. Everything had weaknesses. Everything had limits. The question was, could they find the Zephyrian weakness before Earth became the 48th conquered world? The countdown had begun. 72 hours to save humanity. Time was running out. Dr. Elena Vasquez hadn't slept in 36 hours. Her laboratory was filled with holographic displays showing energy patterns, mathematical equations, and three-dimensional models of the alien ships. Empty coffee cups covered every surface, and her team of physicists worked frantically at their stations. "Doctor, I've got something," called out her assistant. Dr. James Park. His young face was pale with exhaustion, but his eyes were bright with discovery. Elena hurried over to his workstation. "What did you find?" James pointed to a complex energy graph on his screen. "I've been analyzing the power fluctuations in their armor system during the demonstration. Look at this spike here when they first activated the phasing." Elena studied the data carefully. "That's a massive energy surge. Almost like they're charging a capacitor." "Exactly. And look what happens when they maintain the phased state." James highlighted another section of the graph. "The power drain is enormous, but it's steady. They're using consistent energy to keep their ships in the parallel dimension." Elena felt her pulse quicken. "What about when they phase back to normal space?" "Another huge spike, but in reverse." James switched to a different view. "It's like they're dumping excess energy when they return to our dimension." Elena stared at the data, her tired mind racing. "James, this is brilliant. Their armor doesn't just hide them from our weapons. It actually moves their entire ship into a different dimensional space. Which explains why energy weapons pass right through," James added excitedly. "The photons and plasma exist in our dimension, but the ship exists somewhere else. But what about solid matter?" Elena wondered aloud. "Physical objects?" Before James could answer, Elena's communication panel beeped. General Rodriguez appeared on the screen looking grim. "Dr. Vasquez, I need an update. We're running out of time and the president is asking hard questions." Elena rubbed her tired eyes. "General, I think I understand how their armor works, but I'm not sure it helps us yet." "Explain." Elena pulled up her analysis on the main screen. "Their quantum phase armor shifts their ships into a parallel dimension. That's why energy weapons can't touch them. The weapons exist in our space, but the ships exist elsewhere." Rodriguez frowned. "So we're completely defenseless?" "Not necessarily." Elena highlighted the power consumption data. "This technology uses incredible amounts of energy. I'm talking about power levels that would run our entire planetary grid for weeks." "What does that mean for us?" Elena hesitated. "I have a theory, but I need to test it. What if the armor can't handle certain types of attacks?" Meanwhile, in Earth's orbital shipyards, Captain Jake Morrison was doing something he never thought he'd do, preparing museum pieces for war. The UES Yorktown was over 50 years old, scheduled for scrapping next month. Now it might be humanity's last hope. "Captain, the magnetic cannons are online," reported his chief engineer, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Walsh. Her coveralls were stained with grease, and sparks flew from an open panel behind her. Jake nodded, looking around the ancient bridge. Everything was analog controls and physical switches. Nothing like the sleek holographic interfaces of modern ships. "What's our ammunition situation?" "We've got maybe 200 tungsten penetrator rounds," Walsh replied. "Each one weighs about 50 kilograms. The magnetic acceleration system can push them up to 10% of light speed." "Will that be enough to damage the alien ships?" Walsh shrugged. "Against normal armor? Absolutely. Those rounds would punch through any human vessel like paper, but against this phasing technology..." She trailed off uncertainly. Jake understood her concern. Physical projectiles had been the backbone of space warfare for decades, before energy weapons became dominant. Tungsten rods accelerated to enormous speeds could destroy almost anything. But if the alien ships existed in another dimension, would solid objects be any more effective than energy beams? His communication panel chimed. Admiral Chen's face appeared, looking determined despite her obvious exhaustion. "Captain Morrison, what's your status?" "The Yorktown is ready for combat, Admiral. Our kinetic weapons are operational, and we've loaded our full ammunition complement." "Good. How many other ships do we have with physical weapons?" Jake consulted his tactical display. 19 vessels total, Admiral. Most of them are old cargo haulers and industrial ships we've retrofitted with magnetic launchers. Not exactly a fearsome fleet. It's what we've got, Chen replied grimly. Are your crews ready? Jake looked around his bridge at the mix of retired veterans and young volunteers who had answered the call. They're scared but determined, Admiral. We all know what's at stake. On Mars Station, Colonel Park was facing his own challenges. The mining equipment he wanted to use as weapons wasn't designed for combat, and converting it was proving difficult. Sir, I don't think this is going to work, said his chief technician, Sergeant Martinez. They were standing in front of a massive magnetic launcher normally used to send cargo containers to Earth. Why not? Park asked. Martinez pointed to the launcher's control systems. This thing is designed for precision, not speed. It can launch a 10-ton container, but only at about 1,000 kilometers per hour. That's nowhere near fast enough to be an effective weapon. Park studied the device thoughtfully. What if we launched something smaller? Smaller how? Instead of 10-ton containers, what if we launched 1-ton projectiles? Martinez did quick calculations in his head. That would increase the velocity significantly. Maybe up to 10,000 kilometers per hour. Still not fast enough, Park muttered. What about 100-kilogram projectiles? That might work, Martinez said slowly. We could probably get them up to 100,000 kilometers per hour. But sir, at those speeds, the launcher might tear itself apart after a few shots. Park nodded grimly. If this works, we might only get one chance anyway. Back on Earth, the political situation was becoming desperate. President Martinez stood before a joint session of Congress, her face grave as she addressed the packed chamber. My fellow Americans and citizens of Earth, she began. 48 hours ago, we received humanity's first contact with an alien civilization. Unfortunately, they did not come in peace. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Despite the media blackout, rumors had been spreading rapidly. The Zephyrian Empire has demanded our unconditional surrender, the president continued. They have given us 72 hours to comply, or they will destroy our world. The chamber erupted in shouts and questions. President Martinez raised her hand for silence. I want to be clear about our situation. The alien fleet possesses technology that makes them virtually invulnerable to our current weapons. However, our military and scientific personnel are working around the clock to find a solution. Senator Williams from Texas stood up. Madam President, are you saying we should fight? Against impossible odds? President Martinez met his gaze steadily. Senator, humanity has faced extinction before. We survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that should have wiped us out. We survived because we never gave up, and we're not going to start now. The chamber fell silent. We will not surrender our world, the president declared. We will not bow to alien conquerors. If we must fight, we will fight. And if we must die, we will die free. The applause that followed shook the building. Dr. Vasquez was still working when her latest test results came through. She had been running computer simulations for hours, trying to understand the limitations of the alien armor system. James, look at this, she called excitedly. Her assistant hurried over, carrying yet another cup of coffee. What did you find? Elena pointed to her simulation results. I've been modeling what happens when different types of matter encounter their phasing field. Energy passes through completely. That's why our weapons failed. Right, we knew that. But look what happens with solid matter moving at high velocity. Elena ran the simulation again. The phasing field has to work harder to displace physical objects. And the faster the object moves, the more energy it requires. James studied the numbers. This energy requirement curve is exponential. At low speeds, the field can phase solid objects easily. But as velocity increases, the power requirements go through the roof, Elena finished. James, I think physical projectiles moving fast enough might be able to overload their armor system. How fast are we talking about? Elena did quick calculations. Based on these simulations, we'd need projectiles moving at least 5% of light speed to strain their system. At 10% light speed, the power drain would be enormous. Can our weapons achieve those velocities? Elena checked the specifications for human kinetic weapons. Our best magnetic cannons can push tungsten penetrators up to about 12% light speed. That should be more than enough to overload their armor. James grinned tiredly. Doctor, I think you've found our weakness. Elena was already reaching for her communication panel to contact Admiral Chen when alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Red warning lights bathed the laboratory in crimson as an automated voice announced, Alert! Unknown vessels detected approaching Earth. All personnel report to emergency stations. Elena and James rushed to the windows overlooking Earth's surface. In the distance, they could see more alien ships descending through the atmosphere. The original fleet had been reinforced. "They're not waiting for the deadline," James whispered. Elena grabbed her research data and ran for the communications center. "We need to get this information to Admiral Chen immediately." As she ran through the corridors, Elena realized that humanity's time had just run out. The aliens were moving early, probably planning to destroy any resistance before it could form. Her discovery about the armor's weakness might be useless now. Even if she was right, did they have enough time to act on it? Outside, the alien reinforcement fleet settled into position around Earth like a closing fist. War Commander Thexaval had decided not to wait for humanity's answer. The invasion had begun. War Commander Thexaval stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching Earth grow larger on the main view screen. The blue and green planet looked so peaceful, so unaware of what was about to happen. Soon it would be just another conquered world in the Zephyrian Empire. "Commander," reported his tactical officer, "all ships have reached their assigned positions. The reinforcement fleet has arrived on schedule." Thexval nodded with satisfaction. 24 Zephyrian warships now surrounded Earth, their crystal hulls gleaming in the sunlight. The humans had probably expected him to wait for their answer, but Thexval had not conquered 47 star systems by being predictable. "Have the humans responded to our early arrival?" he asked. "Their Admiral Chen has been trying to contact us for the past hour," the communications officer reported. "She keeps requesting to speak with you." Thexval's 4 eyes glittered with amusement. "Let her wait. Fear will make them more compliant." On the bridge of the UES Defiant, Admiral Sarah Chen paced back and forth, her face tight with controlled anger. The alien fleet had doubled in size overnight, clearly preparing for an immediate attack rather than waiting for humanity's answer. "Admiral, we're getting reports from all over the system," Lieutenant Hayes announced. "The aliens have ships positioned near Luna, Mars, and the outer colonies. They're surrounding us completely." Sarah stopped pacing. "Any word from Dr. Vasquez?" "She sent her research findings an hour ago," Hayes replied, pulling up the data on his screen. "She believes she's found a weakness in their armor system." Sarah read through Elena's discovery quickly. The scientist's theory about kinetic weapons was encouraging, but it was still just a theory. They wouldn't know for certain until they tried it in actual combat. "Status report on our kinetic weapon. Ships. Captain Morrison reports that 19 vessels are ready for combat. Most are older ships with magnetic cannons plus some converted industrial craft." Sarah nodded grimly. 19 ships against 24 alien warships that had never been defeated. The odds were not good, but they were better than surrendering without a fight. Her communication panel chimed. The alien war commander's ugly face appeared on the screen, his black eyes showing what might have been amusement. "Admiral Chen," Thexaval said in his grinding voice, "you seem distressed." "You moved up the deadline," Sarah replied coldly. "Our agreement was for 72 hours. Thexval laughed, the sound like metal scraping against stone. "Agreements are made between equals, Admiral. We are not equals. What do you want?" "Your unconditional surrender. Immediately. Order all human military forces to stand down, and we will begin the process of incorporating your species into our empire." Sarah straightened her shoulders. "And if I refuse? Then we will demonstrate why resistance is pointless. We will begin by destroying your orbital defense platforms, then move on to your cities." Thexaval's expression became serious. "This is your final opportunity to save your species from extinction." Sarah looked out at the alien fleet, their hulls shimmering with that terrible blue glow of their invincible armor. In a few hours, those ships would begin systematically destroying everything humans had built in space, unless Dr. Vasquez was right about their weakness. "I need time to consult with my government," Sarah said. "You have 1 hour," Thexval replied. "Then we begin." The transmission ended, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts. 1 hour to prepare for a battle that would determine humanity's fate. She activated her communication system, connecting to all human military forces throughout the solar system. "This is Admiral Chen. All units, prepare for immediate combat. The aliens are not going to wait for our deadline." Captain Morrison's face appeared on her screen from the bridge of the old Yorktown. "Admiral, my ship is ready. What are our orders?" Sarah took a deep breath. "Captain, you and the other kinetic weapon ships are going to test Dr. Vasquez's theory. If she's right, your tungsten penetrators might be able to overload their armor systems." Morrison nodded grimly. "And if she's wrong?" "Then we go down fighting," Sarah replied simply. Across the solar system, human forces prepared for battle. On Mars Station, Colonel Park's converted mining equipment was loaded with dense metal projectiles. In the asteroid belt, mining ships turned their rock-cutting lasers toward the alien fleet. Every human vessel with any kind of weapon was moving into position, but everyone knew the real test would come from the ships with kinetic weapons. If Dr. Vasquez was wrong about the armor's weakness, the battle would be over quickly. The hour passed like minutes. Too soon, Thexval's voice echoed across all human communication channels. "People of Earth," the alien commander announced, "your leaders have had sufficient time to consider our generous offer. Since they have failed to respond with unconditional surrender, we will now demonstrate the futility of resistance." The first alien ship to move was a sleek vessel called the Starpiercer. It glided toward Earth's primary orbital defense platform like a predatory fish. The platform, commanded by Colonel Martinez, bristled with humanity's most advanced weapons. "All batteries, target the approaching vessel," Martinez ordered. "Full power, continuous fire." The space around the platform lit up as dozens of laser cannons and plasma weapons opened fire simultaneously. The beams were so bright they turned the darkness of space into artificial daylight. But just as before, the energy weapons passed harmlessly through the alien ship's hull. The quantum phase armor worked perfectly, making the vessel completely immune to humanity's best technology. "Cease fire," Martinez ordered after 30 seconds of useless bombardment. "All energy weapons are ineffective." On the Starpiercer, the Zephyrian captain watched the human weapons with boredom. "Primitives," he muttered. "They never learn." The alien ship moved closer to the defense platform, its own weapons beginning to charge. Brilliant blue energy gathered along the crystal hull as the Zephyrians prepared to return fire. But before they could shoot, something unexpected happened. "Incoming projectile!" The Starpiercer's sensor officer shouted. "High velocity, solid matter!" The captain spun toward his tactical display. A small object was streaking toward his ship at incredible speed, one of the tungsten penetrator rounds, fired by Captain Morrison's Yorktown from maximum range. "Activate defensive phasing," the captain ordered. "Maximum power." The Starpiercer's armor system engaged, shifting the ship into its parallel dimensional state. The hull became transparent and ghostly as enormous amounts of energy flowed through the phasing generators. The tungsten rod struck the phased hull at 12% of light speed. What happened next had never occurred in the history of Zephyrian warfare. The armor system, designed to phase out energy attacks, suddenly found itself trying to displace solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. The power requirements skyrocketed beyond anything the generators had been designed to handle. Alarms screamed throughout the Starpiercer as the phasing system overloaded. Explosions ripped through the engineering sections as capacitors burst and power conduits melted. The tungsten penetrator, instead of passing harmlessly through the hull, punched straight through the ship's core. "Impossible!" the captain screamed as his ship began breaking apart. On the Yorktown, Captain Morrison watched in amazement as the alien vessel exploded in a brilliant flash of light. "Direct hit," he shouted. Their armor failed. The destruction of the Starpiercer sent shockwaves through both fleets. The Zephyrians stared in horror at the wreckage of their ship, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. The humans erupted in cheers as they realized Dr. Vasquez had been right. Thexval's voice roared across the communication channels. "How is this possible?" "Our armor is perfect." Admiral Chen activated her own transmitter, her voice calm and steady. "Your armor is designed for energy weapons, Commander. We prefer something more direct." "All ships!" Thexval commanded his fleet. "Maximum defensive phasing. These primitive projectiles cannot be allowed to reach us." But as more kinetic rounds streaked toward the Zephyrian vessels, it became clear that maximum phasing was not the solution Thexval thought it was. The increased power draw made the armor systems even more vulnerable to overload. The second alien ship to fall was the Void Hunter. struck by a massive steel projectile launched from Colonel Park's converted mining equipment on Mars. The ship's armor held for almost 3 seconds before catastrophic failure tore it apart. Captain Morrison coordinated the kinetic weapon ships with growing confidence. All vessels target the nearest enemy ships. Continuous fire. Maximum velocity. The old magnetic cannons, weapons that had been considered obsolete for decades, suddenly became humanity's most valuable assets. Tungsten penetrators, steel projectiles, and even chunks of processed asteroid ore streaked across space at incredible speeds. The Zephyrian fleet, which had never faced kinetic weapons before, struggled to adapt. Their perfect armor, which had made them invincible against 47 other species, was failing against humanity's primitive technology. War Commander Thexval watched 3 more of his ships explode in rapid succession. "This cannot be happening," he muttered. "We are the Zephyrian Empire. We do not lose battles." His tactical officer looked up from his displays with panic in his eyes. "Commander, our armor systems cannot handle these solid projectile attacks. The power drain is too severe." "Then we fight without the armor," Thexval snarled. "All ships disengage phasing systems. Return fire with all weapons." But dropping their armor made the Zephyrian ships vulnerable to humanity's energy weapons as well. The orbital defense platforms, previously helpless, now joined the battle with devastating effect. Admiral Chen watched the tide of battle turn and allowed herself a small smile. Dr. Vasquez's theory had been correct. The perfect armor had a fatal weakness that only humans had been primitive enough to exploit. "All ships," she announced to the human fleet, "press the attack. Show these invaders what happens when they threaten Earth." The battle was far from over, but for the first time since the aliens arrived, humanity had hope. The space around Earth had become a war zone unlike anything in human history. Broken pieces of alien ships drifted among the wreckage of human vessels, while bright flashes of weapon fire lit up the darkness like deadly fireworks. War Commander Thexval stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching his supposedly invincible fleet being torn apart by primitive human weapons. 6 Zephyrian ships had already been destroyed, their perfect armor systems overloaded by fast-moving solid projectiles. "Commander, we're receiving damage reports from all vessels," his communications officer reported, his voice shaking with fear. "The Stellar Conquest reports critical armor failures. The Void Ripper has lost all phasing capability. The Dark Star is requesting permission to retreat." Thexval's 4 hands clenched into fists. In over 2 centuries of military service, he had never lost a battle. The Zephyrian Empire had built its reputation on the invincibility of their quantum armor. Now these backward humans were making him look like a fool. "Sir," his tactical officer called out urgently, "more kinetic projectiles incoming." Thexval looked at his display screen and saw dozens of metal objects streaking toward his flagship. The tungsten rods fired by Captain Morrison's Yorktown glowed white-hot from their incredible speed. "Emergency phasing," Thexval commanded. "Maximum power to armor systems." The Eternal Dominion's hull shimmered and became transparent as the quantum armor engaged. But Thexval could see the power consumption, readings climbing dangerously high. Dr. Vasquez had been right. Maintaining the phased state against kinetic attacks required enormous amounts of energy. The first tungsten penetrator struck the flagship's hull. For a moment, the armor held, the metal rod passing partially through the phased matter. But the power drain was incredible. Warning lights flashed across the bridge as the armor generators struggled to maintain the dimensional shift. The second penetrator hit while the generators were already overloaded. The armor system failed catastrophically, and the tungsten rod punched straight through the flagship's hull, causing massive internal explosions. "Hull breach on decks 7 through 12, shouted the damage control officer. "We're losing atmosphere." Thexval felt his perfect world crumbling around him. These humans weren't supposed to be able to hurt his ships. Their weapons were primitive, their technology centuries behind Zephyrian science. Yet somehow they had found the one weakness in his armor that 47 other species had missed. "All ships," he commanded through gritted teeth. "Disengage quantum armor." "We fight them ship to ship." It was a desperate decision. Without their phasing technology, the Zephyrian vessels were still powerful, but they were no longer invincible. Human energy weapons could now damage them normally. Captain Morrison watched the alien ships drop their shimmering armor fields and grinned fiercely. "All right, you bastards. Let's see how tough you are without your tricks." The Yorktown's magnetic cannons continued firing tungsten penetrators, But now Morrison also activated the ship's laser batteries. The old vessel had been upgraded with modern energy weapons before being scheduled for scrapping. Brilliant red laser beams lanced out from the Yorktown, striking the hull of the nearest Zephyrian ship. Without quantum armor protection, the alien vessel's crystalline hull began to crack and melt under the intense heat. "Direct hit," reported Morrison's weapons officer. "Their hull armor is taking damage." All across the battle zone, human ships pressed their advantage. The orbital defense platforms, previously useless against the phased alien vessels, now joined the fight with devastating effect. Plasma cannons and particle beams reached out across space, finding targets that could no longer hide in parallel dimensions. Admiral Chen coordinated the attack from the bridge of the Defiant. All kinetic weapon ships maintain fire on the larger vessels. Energy weapon platforms target the smaller craft. The battle was chaotic and desperate. The Zephyrians, despite losing their perfect defense, were still technologically superior to the humans. Their energy weapons were more powerful, their ships faster and more maneuverable. But the aliens had made a critical mistake. They had grown dependent on their quantum armor, believing it made them invincible. When the armor failed, they found themselves fighting an enemy that had never stopped improving their weapons and tactics. On Mars Station, Colonel Park's converted mining equipment continued launching massive steel projectiles at the alien fleet. His improvised weapons weren't as accurate as military systems, but they didn't need to be. The heavy chunks of metal created devastating damage when they connected with enemy ships at such high velocities. "Sir, the launcher is overheating," reported Sergeant Martinez. "We've fired 30 projectiles in the last 10 minutes. The magnetic coils can't take much more stress." Park nodded grimly. "Keep firing until it breaks. We may not get another chance like this." The mining launcher fired 3 more times before the magnetic acceleration system finally overloaded in a shower of sparks. But those final shots took out another Zephyrian vessel, the massive steel projectiles tearing through the ship's hull like it was made of paper. In her laboratory on Earth, Dr. Elena Vasquez was monitoring the battle through sensor feeds and communication channels. Her theory about the armor's weakness had proven correct, but she knew the fight was far from over. "James, look at these power readings from the remaining alien ships," she called to her assistant. James hurried over to her workstation. "What are you seeing?" Elena pointed to her display. "Several of the Zephyrian vessels are still trying to use their quantum armor, even though it keeps failing. They're cycling the phasing on and off rapidly, probably hoping to deflect at least some of our attacks. Is that working? Not really. The power drain is so severe that they can only maintain phasing for a few seconds at a time, but it's giving me an idea." Elena began running calculations on her computer. What if we could overload their armor systems remotely? Force them to burn out their generators? How would we do that? Elena's fingers flew over her holographic interface, by hitting them with multiple kinetic projectiles simultaneously. If we coordinate our attacks, we can force them to maintain maximum phasing for extended periods. She quickly contacted Admiral Chen with her new strategy. On the bridge of the Defiant, Admiral Chen listened to Elena's proposal with growing excitement. "Doctor, can you coordinate the timing of our kinetic attacks?" "Give me direct communication links to all ships with magnetic cannons," Elena replied. "I can calculate the optimal firing sequences." Within minutes, Elena had established communication with Captain Morrison and the other kinetic weapon commanders. Using her understanding of the alien armor systems, she began coordinating synchronized attacks designed to overload the Zephyrian generators. "Yorktown, fire on my mark," Elena commanded. "Mars mining station launch in 3 seconds. Asteroid mining ship Prospector, fire in 7 seconds. The coordinated attack was devastating. Multiple tungsten penetrators and steel projectiles struck the same Zephyrian ship within seconds of each other. The vessel's quantum armor, already strained from previous attacks, tried desperately to phase out all the incoming projectiles simultaneously. The power overload was spectacular. The alien ship's armor generators exploded in a cascade of blue lightning, taking out most of the vessel's power systems. Without armor or weapons, the ship drifted helplessly, while human forces finished it off with energy weapons. War Commander Thexaval watched another of his ships die and felt something he had never experienced before: genuine fear. His perfect fleet was being destroyed by creatures he had considered primitive insects. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we've lost 12 ships. Half our remaining vessels have armor system failures. The humans are coordinating their attacks to deliberately overload our generators. Thexval stared at the tactical display showing the positions of his remaining ships. Red indicators marked damaged vessels, while yellow warnings showed armor system failures. His invincible armada was falling apart. "How is this possible?" he muttered. "We are the masters of warfare. We have conquered entire star systems." His communications officer looked up nervously. "Commander, several ship captains are requesting permission to withdraw. They say continuing the battle is suicide." The word retreat was almost foreign to Thexval. In 2 centuries of conquest, Zephyrian forces had never needed to withdraw from battle. Their quantum armor had made retreat unnecessary. But looking at his devastated fleet, Thexval finally understood what 47 other species had learned too late. There was no such thing as perfect technology. Every system had weaknesses, and these stubborn humans had found theirs. A new alarm began blaring on the bridge. "Commander, massive kinetic salvo incoming. 20+ projectiles, all targeting our vessel." Thexval watched the display screen show dozens of tungsten, rods and steel projectiles streaking toward his flagship. Dr. Vasquez's coordinated attack was about to test his ship's armor, systems to their absolute limits. "Emergency power to quantum armor," he commanded. "Everything we have." The Eternal Dominion's hull began to phase, but Thexval could see the power consumption readings climbing into dangerous territory. His armor generators were already damaged from previous attacks. The kinetic projectiles struck his ship in rapid succession. The first few penetrators passed through the phased hull harmlessly, but each impact drained more power from the struggling generators. By the time the 10th projectile hit, the armor system was beginning to fail. Warning lights flashed red as power conduits overloaded and backup generators came online. The 15th projectile caused the first critical failure. One of the main armor generators exploded, sending cascades of electrical feedback through the ship's power grid. When the 20th and final projectile struck, the quantum armor system finally collapsed completely. The tungsten rod punched through the flagship's hull and continued straight through the bridge. Thexval watched in horror as his command center exploded around him. His perfect armor, his invincible fleet, his reputation as an undefeated commander, all of it was being destroyed by humans throwing rocks at incredibly high speeds. As emergency power failed and his flagship began to break apart, Thexval made the most difficult decision of his military career. "All remaining ships," he broadcast weakly, "retreat to minimum safe distance. Signal the humans that we wish to negotiate." For the first time in Zephyrian history, their perfect armor had failed, and with it, their empire's reputation for invincibility was crumbling as well. The silence after the battle was almost as shocking as the fighting itself. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, looking out at the aftermath of humanity's first interstellar war. Wreckage from both fleets drifted through space, spinning slowly in Earth's gravity well. Of the 24 Zephyrian warships that had threatened Earth, only 8 remained. They hung in space at a safe distance, their once proud crystal hulls scarred and darkened. Most importantly, none of them showed the blue glow of active quantum armor. "Admiral," Lieutenant Hayes reported quietly, "we're receiving a transmission from the alien flagship." "It's War Commander Thexval," Sarah nodded. She had been expecting this call. "Put him through." The main view screen flickered to life, showing the Zephyrian commander on his damaged bridge. Thexval looked different now. His arrogance was gone, replaced by something Sarah had never expected to see in an alien conqueror's face: defeat. "Admiral Chen," Thexval said, his grinding voice much quieter than before, We request an immediate ceasefire." Sarah kept her expression neutral, though inside she felt a surge of triumph. "Are you surrendering, Commander?" Thexval's 4 eyes closed briefly. The word surrender clearly caused him physical pain to speak. "The Zephyrian Empire yields this engagement. We wish to negotiate terms for withdrawal." "You attacked our world without provocation," Sarah replied firmly. "You threatened to destroy our cities and enslave our people. Why should we let you leave?" "Because," Thexval said slowly, "what you have accomplished today will change everything. The galaxy must know that the Zephyrian Empire's armor can be defeated. Our reputation for invincibility is broken." Sarah understood what he wasn't saying directly. For an empire built on fear and technological superiority, losing a battle was more than just a military defeat. It was the beginning of the end of their power. "I'm listening to your terms," she said. Captain Morrison joined the communication from the Yorktown, his old ship scarred but still fighting. "Admiral, shouldn't we finish them off? They came here to destroy us." Sarah considered this. The human fleet had taken heavy losses too. 7 ships had been destroyed, and most of the others were damaged. If they continued fighting, they might win completely, but the cost could be enormous. "Commander Thexaval," she said finally, "here are our terms. Your fleet will leave this system immediately and never return. You will broadcast throughout your empire that humanity is not to be attacked or threatened, and you will provide us with compensation for the damage you've caused." Thexaval's expression darkened. "Compensation? What do you want?" Sarah smiled coldly. "Technology. Specifically detailed information about your quantum armor systems and how to build them." "Impossible," Thexaval snapped. "That technology is the foundation of our empire's power." "Then you can stay here and we'll finish what we started," Sarah replied calmly. "Your choice, Commander." On his bridge, Thexaval looked around at his damaged ship and his defeated officers. He could see the fear in their eyes. Fear of these primitive humans who had somehow found a way to destroy the perfect armor. "Very well," he said finally. "We will transmit the technical specifications for our quantum phasing technology. But in return, you must promise that humanity will not use this knowledge to attack Zephyrian worlds." "Agreed," Sarah said. "As long as you leave us alone, we'll leave you alone." The data transmission took several hours. Dr. Elena Vasquez worked with her team to verify that the information was complete and accurate. The quantum armor technology was incredibly advanced, but now that humans understood the principles behind it, they could begin developing their own versions. "This is amazing," Elena told Admiral Chen over a secure communication link. "With this technology, we can build phasing systems that don't have the same weaknesses as theirs. We can design armor that handles both energy and kinetic attacks." "How long before we can start building it?" Sarah asked. "Give me 6 months and I'll have a working prototype," Elena replied excitedly. "Give me 2 years, and every human ship will be equipped with quantum armor." As the Zephyrian fleet prepared to leave the solar system, War Commander Thexval made one final transmission to Earth. "Admiral Chen," he said, his voice carrying a note of grudging respect, "I have fought wars across the galaxy for 2 centuries. I have conquered species with technology far more advanced than yours. But never have I encountered an enemy that turned our greatest strength into our greatest weakness." "We had good teachers," Sarah replied. "You showed us exactly how your armor worked. We just found a different way to look at the problem." "Your kinetic weapons," Thexval continued, "they are considered primitive by galactic standards. Most species abandoned such crude methods millennia ago in favor of energy-based warfare." Sarah nodded. "We've heard that before. But sometimes the old ways work better than the new ones." "Indeed." Thexval paused, seeming to consider his next words carefully. "Admiral, you should know that your victory today will have consequences far beyond this system. There are other species in the galaxy who have suffered under Zephyrian rule. When they learn that our armor can be defeated, they'll rebel," Sarah finished. "Yes, the empire we have spent centuries building may collapse within years, all because you refuse to abandon your primitive weapons." Sarah felt no sympathy for the alien commander. "You should have thought about that before you tried to conquer us." The last Zephyrian ship left Earth's solar system 12 hours later. Admiral Chen watched them go from the bridge of the Defiant, knowing that humanity had just changed the balance of power in the galaxy. President Martinez addressed the world that evening, standing before a joint session of Congress that was broadcast to every nation on Earth. "My fellow humans," she began, "today we faced extinction and we survived. More than that, we won." The applause was thunderous. "The alien invasion has been repelled, not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through human ingenuity and determination. Our scientists found the enemy's weakness. Our engineers built weapons to exploit it, and our military forces fought with courage and skill." President Martinez paused to let the cheering subside. "But our victory today is about more than just defeating one alien fleet. We have proven that humanity belongs among the stars. We have shown that Earth will not bow to alien conquerors, and we have gained technology that will help us defend ourselves in the future." 3 months later, Admiral Chen stood in the orbital shipyard where the first human vessels equipped with quantum armor were being built. The UES Enterprise, humanity's newest warship, gleamed with the same blue energy field that had once made the Zephyrians invincible. But there were differences. Human engineers had solved the power consumption problem that made the alien armor vulnerable to kinetic attacks. They had also added new capabilities that the Zephyrians had never thought of. Dr. Vasquez, Sarah asked the scientist who was inspecting the new armor systems, "How effective is our version compared to theirs?" Elena grinned. "Better in every way. Our armor can phase out both energy and kinetic attacks without the massive power drain. We've also added the ability to phase selectively. Parts of the ship can remain solid while other sections phase out." "And the offensive capabilities?" "That's the best part," Elena said excitedly. "We can fire weapons while phased. Something the Zephyrians never figured out how to do." 6 months after the battle, reports began reaching Earth of rebellions throughout the Zephyrian Empire. Species that had been conquered decades or centuries ago were rising up against their alien overlords, using kinetic weapons that could overload the once perfect quantum armor. The Altarian Republic was the first to break free, followed quickly by the Centauri Federation. Within a year, the mighty Zephyrian Empire had collapsed into dozens of independent systems. Captain Morrison, now commanding the new UES Yorktown II, brought the news of the Empire's final defeat to Earth. "Admiral," he reported to Sarah Chen, "the Zephyrian homeworld has surrendered to a coalition of their former subjects. War Commander Thexval is being held for trial as a war criminal." Sarah nodded with satisfaction. "What about their quantum armor technology?" "Spread throughout the galaxy," Morrison replied. "Every species now knows how to build phasing systems and how to counter them. The age of invincible armor is over." Admiral Chen looked out at Earth's orbital defenses, now bristling with both kinetic and energy weapons, all protected by quantum armor that had learned from humanity's enemies. The planet that had almost been conquered was now one of the most well-defended worlds in the galaxy. A communication alert drew her attention to the main view screen. The face that appeared was not human. It belonged to Ambassador Vextar of the newly formed Galactic Democratic Council. "Admiral Chen," the alien diplomat said in perfect English, "the Council has voted unanimously to offer humanity full membership in our organization. Your species' contribution to galactic freedom has been noted." Sarah smiled. "We appreciate the offer, Ambassador. What would membership involve?" "Full trading rights, access to galactic communication networks, and participation in our mutual defense agreements," Vextar replied. "In return, we would hope that humanity might share some of your unique perspectives on warfare and technology." "You mean our kinetic weapons?" Sarah said with amusement. "Among other things, yes. It seems that in our rush to embrace advanced energy-based warfare, we forgot some fundamental principles about combat. Your species has reminded us that sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective." Sarah considered the offer. Membership in the Galactic Council would give humanity access to technologies and knowledge beyond their wildest dreams. But it would also mean taking on responsibilities and making enemies throughout the galaxy. "We'll need time to discuss this with our government," she said finally. "Of course. But Admiral, I hope you will consider it seriously. The galaxy needs species like yours, ones that think differently, that don't accept that newer is always better." After the transmission ended, Sarah remained on the bridge, looking out at the stars. Humanity had survived its first contact with hostile aliens. They had turned their supposed primitiveness into a strength. And now they were being invited to join a galactic community as equals rather than subjects. Lieutenant Hayes approached her quietly. "Admiral, what do you think we should do?" Sarah smiled. "We'll join them, Hayes, but on our terms, and we'll make sure they understand one thing." "What's that, Admiral?" "Never underestimate humans with big guns." The laughter that followed echoed throughout the bridge, carried by humans who had saved their world by refusing to abandon the weapons their enemies thought were obsolete. They had proven that sometimes the old ways were indeed the best ways. And in the depths of space on worlds throughout the galaxy, other species were learning the same lesson that the Zephyrians had learned too late. Never assume that primitive means powerless. The age of human expansion into the galaxy had begun.